Welcome to the PKN Podcast, where we give you the wrap on all things packaging.
Welcome to the PKN Packaging News Podcast. My name's Grant McCarran, and as ever, I'm joined by Lindy Hewson, Managing Editor and Publisher of PKN Packaging News and the superb host of this show. G'day, Lindy. How are you doing today?
I have to laugh every time you start the show, Grant, and you have to think of an adjective to describe me that's that's positive. Thank you very much for going to that effort. I love being superb today, so let's hope we will have a superb discussion. I'm confident we will. Today, we're going to be looking at something a little bit different from our usual because we're going behind the scenes and looking at the manufacturing side of things. I think people often forget the importance of the machinery and equipment that helps get products to shelf. So with us today, our guest is Nathan Wardell. He is the managing director of a company called Packserv, and he's going to tell us more about machinery side of things, his insights into FMCG trends, and some of the activities and work that his company is doing. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thanks so much, Lindy. Great to be here.
Now, I'd like you to start by giving us some background on Packserv. How did the company come into being, and what is its core focus today?
Packserv, I started from scratch in 2007, so we're now 18. Before that, though, I worked for my father's business, which was Rentokil, before he sold it and retired. So I spent 11 years as the general manager at Rentokil, and Packserv's now 18, so I suppose I'm coming up on 30 years that I've been doing what I do. But my family's been involved in packaging and manufacturing and FMCG now for 3 generations. And one of my sons is now working in the business as well. So that makes 4 generations now in FMCG and packaging manufacturing. So quite a long time that my family's been involved in the industry. In terms of our core focus, we supply filling, capping, labeling, batch coding, printing machines for FMCG manufacturers, not in a particular industry or category. So we do some work in food, pharmaceuticals, as well as veterinary and industrial chemical, food and beverage, that sort of thing. So a very broad spectrum of clients that we supply, but essentially it's all around FMCG packaging.
So there are a number of other original equipment manufacturers in the market. What would you say is your point of difference?
The fact that we're local. I know that during COVID, a lot of people had difficulties that were relying on international supply chains and waiting for third-party manufacturers wherever they were based. Because we have our own manufacturing division in-house, we were able to continue rolling without any delays because we make our machinery in our factory here in Marrickville in Sydney. So that's definitely a key point of difference, being a local manufacturer and also being self-sufficient. So we don't really have any impact on lead times and that sort of thing from supply chain issues. A lot of the industry is based on manufacturer or import and sale, but we also do rentals. So in terms of points of difference, aside from being local, we have rentals, we have rent to buy, we have leasing, we have outright sales, but we also have technical and support for maintenance and breakdown and that sort of thing as well.
And can you give us some examples of how your machinery solutions support FMCG brands in Australia?
Absolutely. In addition to having really short lead times, because we try and have everything in stock at all times, we do have all of those purchase options. So clients don't have to do an outright sale just to acquire a piece of machinery. We often will put in a rental while we're manufacturing something and then swap it out, and customers can switch that to a rent to buy. Being more of a one-stop shop in that we don't just supply one machine. We might supply a line that has 10 different machines on it, and all of those machines come out of our facility supplied by us, and our technicians can install and work on all of them. So you're only dealing with one supplier. You're not calling 6 people to set up a production line. We actually have a presence in 5 out of 8 states around Australia too, which is good. So we have a good reach in terms of being able to supply and support a lot of FMCG manufacturers around the country. We have a team of trained technicians and technical support on the road all the time. In-house manufacturing, we've got our own CAD/CAM department and engineering shop, so we can make our own parts and accessories and design and do custom engineering as well. And we support a lot of different size and scales of FMCG manufacturers. So sometimes people will want just a machine, and other times people will want a whole production line. So that modular automation piece is key for us as well, because we don't have to supply one block of a machine. We can actually supply bits and pieces and reconfigure a line to suit a customer's requirements.
Okay, so we've got the general gist of what it is that you do and how you can support manufacturers. You're out there, you're talking to FMCG manufacturers all the time. What are you seeing by way of trends in FMCG packaging and processing?
At the moment, I think there's a lot of changes happening. And I think with the difficulties of the market at the moment, with this interest rates inflation, a lot of pressure has been put on manufacturing. A lot of costs are going up and a lot of businesses have got into trouble. There's been record numbers of liquidations and administrations over the last few years, company closures, sales and mergers. But more recently, seeing some CEO resignations and change of leadership too, which is also, I would say, an indication of some difficult times or challenging times or businesses that are under pressure. So with the changing landscape in FMCG, I think businesses that are able to adapt to the new environment, the new norm, and be able to cope with the changes that are going on are the ones that are thriving. But there's not a lot of that at the moment. So we are seeing a bit more interest in our rental and rent-to-buy offerings because people aren't necessarily having to come up with the outright capital to purchase something. So just a lot of change, I would say, is what I'm seeing at the moment from our FMCG clients. Another thing that we're seeing more of from our clients now is investments into new technology and revisions of packaging. So some clients now are switching from plastics into paper-based products and containers, which is great to see. More of a focus on sustainability and recyclability, minimizing packaging, but also minimizing use of plastics, which is great for the environment and certainly in keeping with APCO's recommendations for packaging targets.
Okay, and so in seeing those trends, do you as a machinery manufacturer then adapt what you're offering to help companies stay competitive?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of competition from imports and new technology that's coming onto the market. So we are always developing not just our current product line, but also investing into new technology. So Industry 4.0, the Internet of Things, and a lot of manufacturers now are adopting new technology, and you're getting a whole lot more feedback from machinery lines in terms of data capturing and remote access, maintenance, scheduled maintenance, predictive maintenance, and those sorts of things. And being able to interact with the machinery when you're not actually on site is a real advantage as well.
I'm curious to know, Nathan, whether you think the uptake of automation and industrial Internet of Things based technology is at a fast enough pace for Australia.
I think the pace that the technology is developing is actually faster than the industry can adopt it. In terms of our client base, and we're predominantly an SME supplier, the amount of technology that's available exceeds, I think, the market's ability to be able to adopt it as quick as it's appearing. And that is, we are still supplying a lot of our stock standard product lines to manufacturers that are putting products on the shelf in supermarkets that aren't using the latest technology, largely because whilst it's available, it's unaffordable to a lot of smaller manufacturers. And SMEs make up most of the businesses within Australia. They put most of the products on the shelf and the employer of most workers as an employment industry. But in terms of the adoption of technology, a lot of this equipment is priced away from being able to be implemented immediately. And so a lot of manufacturers are still running more standard pneumatic controls without the Industry 4.0 and the data, and it's not necessarily connected to the internet. It's more of a traditional manufacturing facility.
And so how's Packserv integrating Industry 4 and other and related technologies into its offerings?
In the lead up to the Apex exhibition, we had a project that we were working on, which was a fully digital machine. It was PLC controlled and servo driven, and it had no pneumatics attached to it at all, a high-speed filling line. And whilst the technology is available and whilst we did adopt that technology and build that equipment, it's still not the most popular piece of machinery in our range. A lot of manufacturers are still opting for using the stock standard pneumatic controls and without the digitization being attached to it. Whilst there's great technology out there like robots and cobots and 4.0 and 5.0 and a whole lot of technical capabilities, a lot of manufacturers still don't have the skill sets on site in their manufacturing facilities to be able to operate that level of equipment, and also the price tag attached to it still prices a lot of manufacturers out of that market.
I'd like to turn now to discussion on government incentives and support, because as you probably well know, without support from government in many instances, some manufacturing sectors really are struggling to survive. It has introduced various incentives to support Australian manufacturing. How effective has these incentives been for businesses like Packserv and your customers?
There have been some government incentives, and there is support out there. I think it's quite narrowly focused on specific industries. I think if you're in defense or solar or sustainability or recycling and those sorts of things, a lot of that support is more readily available. But if you're not involved in one of those key focus industries, that support is a little bit more difficult to attain. And whilst there are some great facilities out there like R&D funding, if you're investing into new technology, if you're building new exciting tech, if you're pushing the envelope in terms of technology, R&D funding is a great way to actually get some assistance. But for a lot of manufacturers that aren't necessarily in those key areas of focus, there isn't really a whole lot of support readily available. And whilst we're seeing some cases of some manufacturers receiving some funding, it's not widespread. It's quite specific, and it's not readily available to a broad spectrum.
Are there any particular gaps in support that you see need addressing?
I think any businesses at the moment that have survived the last couple of years, like COVID and this last interest rates inflation thing, and are still thriving, particularly if they are either exporting or trying to export, I think there should be more support readily available to help those businesses continue to manufacture products, particularly if they're going to be available for export, just to help in terms of boosting our country's GDP and getting more of our products offshore. We have a great reputation internationally, but it is quite difficult to be able to get to a point, as particularly as an SME, without any assistance. If you're privately owned and self-funded, it is quite difficult to get to a point of scale where you're actually able to reach international markets.
So what more do you think could be done at a policy level to ensure the growth and competitiveness of local manufacturing?
I think, without diving too far into a tariff war, I think that there could be disincentives for the amount of foreign machinery that's imported. Australia imports about 5 times more machinery than we export. And I think there's a lot of equipment coming into Australia, not just in packaging, but generally, that is really to the disadvantage of our onshore manufacturers. And I think if there were more incentives to inspire local manufacturing, to be more competitive locally, but also globally, I think that would go a long way. And if government really has a focus on manufacturing and wants to boost our economy, then there really could be more support for Australian-owned and Australian-made, particularly from Australian materials. One of our customers at the moment is on the shelf against an imported product. And I looked it up before our meeting today on the Woolworths website, and the imported product from China was 1/10 of the cost of the locally made product that was from 75% local ingredients on the shelf right next to it. And I just think that if we want FMCG to be more competitive, I'm not quite sure that putting a home brand product on the shelf next to a locally manufactured product for 1/10 of the cost is really fair competition. It really does seem like it's more dumping or a subsidized import. I'm not sure how someone can manufacture a product internationally, import it all the way into Australia and get it onto the shelf for less than the cost of the locally made product. Not less than the sell price, but less than the cost price of a locally made product. I really think that we are putting our manufacturers at a disadvantage at the outset.
Yeah, and I agree with you there, Nathan. I think those sorts of examples are quite shocking. And there's all this discussion all the time about reshoring manufacturing in Australia, make manufacturing great again, and so on. But are you actually seeing a shift towards more local production?
At the moment, not so much. We did see a shift back to purchasing more local product following COVID due to the problems that people were having with international supply chains and delays. Some machinery manufacturers, even ones that are represented in Australia, were promoting lead times of 6 to 12 months. I think as a manufacturer, like of an FMCG product, if you see an opportunity in the market, you're not going to be waiting 6 to 12 months for a piece of machinery so you can actually take opportunity. You're going to grab something local. And we did see quite a big spike in purchasing local and a real focus on Australian made. And I think Australian made did quite well. But over the last 12 to 18 months during this more recent economic situation of interest rates and inflation, there was a transition, I think, more back towards imported products. And so I think that a lot of that equipment that has been coming in has been purchased on a price consideration, not on a quality consideration. And I'd like to think that as the market picks back up again, and if we're in any way tied or following the US market, there's been an election and the Fed dropped its rate significantly. We're coming up on a local election. We've already had a rate cut. I think if we can see some more rate cuts, get an election out of the way, I think by the time we get into the later stages, last month or couple of months of this financial year, I'm hoping that we see the market start to pick back up again. But in that, I would love to see that purchasing decisions are made with a longer time frame in mind, and not necessarily price-based, but quality-based, not just to get us through the next 12 months, but to look at the next 10 years. Something that we adopt here at Packserv is a buy-for-life philosophy in terms of building a piece of machinery that it can be indefinitely refurbished and re-engineered and continue to be used, rather than after 6 to 12 months being worn out and being ready to be recycled and just going into landfill. I think we see too much of that already.
In terms of Australian manufacturers that I've spoken to, they are under tremendous pressure, facing challenges of rising input costs, shortage of raw materials, and so on. What to you are the biggest challenges that manufacturers are facing, and how can the industry address them?
I think there are a lot of factors in that. Cost of production is significant. Everything has gone up. Wages in particular, cost of human resources has gone up. Materials, energy, transport, the cost of facilities and real estate. Basically, everything got more expensive, but then there was an enormous amount of pressure in the last year or so, or two perhaps, just to bring prices back down again. And that is when I think people are going for more price-determined or making more price-determined decisions rather than quality decisions. I think that there has been a lot of global challenges, and I think we're still seeing the wash-up of more recent international events and elections. There has been a lot of supply chain issues. Cost of shipping has also gone up. And, of course, the value of the Australian dollar is having a significant impact as well. The market continues to get smaller as the number of businesses is reducing. And costs are going up and prices are driven down. And there's no real support for legitimate manufacturing businesses to get offshore. So as an owner of an SME, there hasn't been a lot of assistance to continue driving to the level that we have to try and get offshore. It's really just a survival mechanism now, I think, for the people that have survived the last few years.
And as an SME, from your perspective, what role does collaboration between government, the industry, and technology providers play in strengthening Australian manufacturing?
We have world-leading educational facilities here, and internationally people come here to study just due to the quality of the education that they can receive here and the reputation of our qualifications from our universities. Businesses that are at the front of technology that don't tap into that skill set are really missing an opportunity. I think collaboration is critical, and we certainly have benefit from that as well in the work that we've done with universities and academic bodies. And it is a really important piece for Australian manufacturing to remain competitive on the world stage. We have been working with universities and academic bodies in developing technology and accessing that skill set. And the collaboration between academics, government, and industry has been really beneficial for us.
And if you have to look ahead in your crystal ball, Nathan, what's your outlook for the future of packaging and processing machinery manufacturing? So the machinery manufacturing aspect of it in Australia.
I really feel like we're turning the corner locally. And I think as we get into the later stages of this year, we will see the market pick up in terms of the number of businesses that are investing into new machinery and new facilities and growth and taking advantage of the opportunities that present as the market does swing upwards. And it'd be great if we are turning the corner in terms of onshore manufacturing, including machinery as well as FMCG products. I think we're seeing quite a few indicators now that our local economy is picking up. And with this continued focus on sustainability and the circular economy and being more considerate of our environment and the technology advancements that we're seeing as well, I just think that we're only going to see good things coming out of manufacturing and machinery as this year progresses.
Well, Nathan, thanks for sharing those insights with us today. I certainly learned a lot more about your business than I knew before. I have witnessed the type of innovation that you bring to the shows like Apex, and I've always been very impressed by it. I've also been super impressed by the forward-thinking nature of your collaborations with academia, because I feel that is so important in terms of skills transfer as well. So thanks very much for joining us today, and I wish you everything of the best.
Thanks so much, Lindy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Lindy. And of course, thanks to our audience for joining us today for this episode. Don't forget, if you enjoyed what you've heard, you can email Lindy via editor@packagingnews.com.au with any questions, comments, or suggestions you may have. We do like hearing your feedback. We'll be back in the not too distant future with another informative discussion. But until then, have a great day.
The PKN Podcast is produced by Southern Skies Media on behalf of PKN Packaging News, owned and published by Yaffa Media. The views of the people featured on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of PKN Packaging News, Yaffa Media, or the guest's employer. The contents are copyright by Yaffa Media. If you wish to use any of this podcast audio, please contact us via the website or send an email to editor@packagingnews.com.au. You can subscribe to this podcast via your preferred platform and read all the latest news on Australia's packaging industry at packagingnews.com.au.
You've been listening to a Yaffa Media podcast.
Southern Skies Media.